What's up, guys? Before we get to the Wyatt interview, and I am super stoked to show you guys that, let me say real quick, thank you guys so much for the 1,000 subs. I am so grateful, and I appreciate you each step of the way. I did want to say real quick, if you didn't win the Lavender Quarter Zip giveaway, we gave away a Lavender Quarter Zip at 1,000 subs. It went so well, and we had so much support on that giveaway that I've decided to do another one once we hit 2,000 subs. Same rules, same everything. I will be giving away another Lavender Quarter Zip, so if it's something you're interested in, stick around for that, and there will be another chance for you to get your hands on a Lavender Quarter Zip. Guys, I hope you enjoy the interview. My man Wyatt is the best. I know you guys probably agree. It's an awesome interview, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome in. We have got an absolute legend here on the show today. Let me introduce Wyatt Thompson. Wyatt, the voice of the Kansas State Wildcats. He's been doing an incredible job. He's been the voice of so many people's different childhoods, different adulthood, and college students everywhere look up to him. So, Wyatt, I know I'm one of them, and I appreciate having you on the show.
Joe, you are so kind. I appreciate such a wonderful introduction. And I'll tell you what, I know you're just like me. You're ready to get this thing going, man. We've talked a lot about what this team could be, and we're going to finally see them on the field on Saturday. I can't wait.
Me neither. It is coming closer and closer. We are just a couple of days away, which is wild to say out loud at this point. But Wyatt, I got to ask you a little bit about last year. It was such an exciting time for both football and basketball. And I know in my case, every single game I watched, I was just sitting there shaking afterwards. I was so excited. I'd love to hear your experience. I know you were on the field for both, K-State football to the Big 12 championship and everything incredible over there. And then also a big contributor on the March Madness run and some of the events for K-State. It was absolutely electric to hear you on the call. I'd love to hear your experience with how this past season went.
Well, as you know, I have been at Kansas State for 21 full seasons. I start 22 this week, actually back on July 1st. And I've been very, very, very lucky with so many things, so many teams, so many coaches. But last year was pretty special. And I think you laid it out to the fact that Kansas State wins a third football championship in my time here, plays in its first ever New Year's Six bowl game, follows that up with that kind of basketball season. It's really, in all honesty, Joe, hard to put it into the proper context of not only how special it was for what they did, but how they went about it. I think we all knew going into last fall, as an example, that K-State was going to have a good football team, but they had to go through some adversity, and I hope people remember that about them. Adrian Martinez was the quarterback when the year started, and he was injured. I don't think anybody other than Chris Kleiman, Will Howard, Colin Klein, and a couple of others thought we were going to see the Will Howard we saw when he trotted out there and kind of took over. And then what Coach Tang did, putting together, albeit a veteran team, but a really good team, and having a run like that, that's something that people write books and make movies about, right? I mean, it's not supposed to be that easy, but it was so much fun. And, to go on that kind of ride and experience Greensboro and Madison Square Garden in New York City, and some of the things we saw with those unbelievable talented players. I mean, how lucky am I to see? I'll just throw out a few names here. How lucky was I in one sports season to see guys like Deuce Vaughn, Felix Anudike-Uzama, Julius Brents, Will Howard. I guess that's enough there. But then you get into basketball and Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel. I mean, are you kidding? It's, again, not supposed to be that easy, but what a ride it was. And that kind of moves us into this year, right? Making the expectations much, much higher.
That's 100% correct. And I apologize. I'm coughing a bit on my end. This is a fair warning. I do want to ask on that topic, you touched on the expectations for next year. Yeah. And there's been a ton of expectations in both basketball and football. And the big narrative for K-State has been elevating the expectations. Jerome Tang gets to town, and K-State across the league was picked at the bottom of the league. Everybody kind of didn't expect anything out of this K-State team, not necessarily K-State fans, but the league as a whole. What would you say are your expectations going forward? You have the right guys at both head coaching positions, and it's just an exciting time to be a K-State fan, but I'd love to hear your expectations. And if you want to start with football first, then tie into basketball a little bit, I'll give the floor to you.
I think it's a really good question. And I think to start, what I have to say is, for me personally, it all starts with the head coaches. And even just a step above that with with Gene Taylor and the job that he has done with K-State athletics, to hire Chris Kleiman back in 2019 or whatever, and to see what Jerome Tang has done, it's really a great feeling going into new seasons after what we talked about happened a year ago, and how consistent, even through COVID. I think everybody would say that, and not that everybody else didn't experience that and go through it too, but I think we all know now that Chris Kleiman is indeed a very good fit for Kansas State. He's very consistent in what he does on a daily basis. And for us to be talking like this and him following a guy like Bill Snyder, I think that kind of gives you a pretty good sense of how good he is. Bill Snyder was one of a kind, but this guy's pretty darn good too. And I appreciate him because he's so comfortable in who he is, what he is, how he goes about his business. And every year that he's been here, Joe, it's been better and better and better in terms of, the consistency, the recruiting process, and all of that. I tell people all the time with this team, we've got 15 starters back from a championship team. But in addition to that, we've got so many young, talented guys that are going to be making their way. Some may be quicker than others, but if you project down the road a year or two or three or what have you, man, I'm excited about, what we bring to the table. Everybody knows what Avery Johnson has the potential to be, but he's just one guy, not a special guy, no doubt about that. But there are others that I think are really going to make their way. I'm convinced of it. It's a quality football team with really good leadership at the top with the coaches, but also with the players, and that's such a big deal. When you look at those guys that were voted captains, I think it tells you everything in terms of the type of people they are. With the basketball, it's going to look a lot different. I think, in all honesty, we're going to have a very good basketball team, but it's going to not be quite as experienced as what we saw a year ago. If you think about how many games Marquise played, Keontae played, Desi Sills, Tyke Green, those kind of guys, David Gasson, going into, last year, it wasn't easy to put them all together, but with that great coaching and that experience, you saw that explosion. The exciting thing for me is when you look at this particular team, you've got those guys returning, but you also add Kaluma to that and Perry to that, 3 4-star freshmen, and now Quest Glover. So I think they're going to be really good. I can't wait for that either, to be honest with you. And it's scary, but October isn't all that far away. It truly isn't.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been counting down the days for both football and basketball. And you mentioned leadership at both positions on the football side of things and the basketball side of things. And I'm sure you've been a big part of this. It feels like all of Kansas State is taking a step forward. Whether it be from the athletic perspective or those who cover it. One thing you've done a ton in is the Catbackers Tour, where it's been different spots in Kansas. And I know I went out to the KC event, and it's incredible. Now, I mean, we know how passionate the fan base is, but to have leaders like you, yourself, Chris Kleiman, Colin Klein, guys that go around and take the time out of their day, and I want to mention Jerome Tang too, don't want to just glaze past Coach Tang. It feels like all of Kansas State is elevating right now, especially with the fan aspect, things like that. Do you want to touch a little bit on the Catbacker Tour and some of the cool things you've seen from that experience?
Well, the Catbacker Tour has always been special for me and several others within our department because it's kind of our way to go out and thank all of those great K-Staters for coming to us so many times. You think about 6, 7, 8 times a year in the fall and the kind of weather that they endure from time to time to get here for men or women's basketball or whatever it might be, sitting through, some cold baseball games early in the season and those kind of things. I think what makes K-State as special as anything is we heard Bill Snyder say this for years and years and years. It's the people, but it's the people that are so invested in not just K-State athletics, but Kansas State University. I think what you said is right. We've had a lot of success here most recently, but I think being out on that tour this year, Joe, we saw as much excitement and had so many people say to us, I don't know that it's ever been better at K-State than it is right now. It's hard to maintain that, and I guess we'll find out to see if we're anywhere in the vicinity of what last year was. And yet I think everybody sees that there's a lot of potential, not only this year, but moving forward with the leadership here. I appreciate you even just throwing my name out there on that, because I've been so fortunate to be here, and I love K-Staters. That they are the most passionate fan base. It's easy to say when you're around it, but you almost have to be around it to really get a special feel for what K-Staters are like. And again, I'll be repetitive saying this. Right now, I say this every day of my life, but right now, it is a great day to be a Wildcat, right? I mean, it just is.
Well, that gives me chills to hear, man. I appreciate you saying that. So I do want to ask you this, and I'm not sure if you've seen the video yet. You most likely have, but Cooper Beebe recently went pretty viral for his answer. I believe it was on the Mike Golick show. And he was asked a question about what is the best restaurant in Manhattan. And without missing a beat, the guy said Jimmy John's, which, not that I'm not a Jimmy John's supporter here. I think a lot of us were kind of like, man, you're choosing a chain restaurant here, man. So I know I have to ask you, Manhattan local, you've been around the community for so long. Do you have an answer for what is the best restaurant in Manhattan, or even just one of your personal favorites?
Well, let me just say this about Cooper first and foremost. I think that says a lot about him and just what a daily grinder that kid is. He is a star, man, but he's as humble as they come. I've been here and I've been around a lot of special people, but I'm going to put him in the top 5%. He's incredibly good. Now, as for Manhattan, Kansas eateries, I've always been such a fan of So Long Saloon, which I don't get to as often as I would like, and maybe that's a good thing for my waistline. But I think I would start with it. I don't think you can talk about Manhattan food right now and not talk also about Taco Lucha. So those are a couple that, kind of jump to the forefront. There have been so many over the years. I was a big fan of Coco Bolos, and they're no longer around, but that's what makes Manhattan kind of cool too. There's always a special place or two that everybody frequents. It's just kind of, hey, that's what college towns do, right? And this is one of the great college towns in the country, in my opinion.
Well, I'll ask you this, and I think, first of all, I want to commend you for that. Cooper Beebe is, absolutely deserves to be in the ring of, K-State's Ring of Honor, and I'll be excited to see what happens this season with that K-State offensive line. I would want to ask you this, on the topic of college towns expansion, everybody's talked about conference expansion, and the Big 12. What I've always kind of felt separates it is the passionate towns that a lot of these teams are in. Manhattan's a great example. I mean, Lawrence gets some love as well. There's so many different spots through the Big 12, Stillwater, Ames, that are just awesome tourist locations as a college football fan or basketball fan. With the teams we added in, would you talk about some of if you've had any experiences with either fans or just any type of experience in either of the towns we brought in, whether it be the 4 teams this year or the 4 teams coming in 2024?
Well, it's a very interesting subject for me on lots of different levels. And I said from the beginning, it's virtually impossible to replace the brands that are Oklahoma and Texas. I wish them the best. A lot of people don't necessarily say it like that, but they did what they had to do. And okay. But what I'm very proud of is that how those others stuck together. And I think you hit on something there. When you go in the fall to Manhattan and to Ames and to Stillwater and to Waco and to Lubbock, those people care too if they put a good product out on the field. And I think this has always been a league that is hugely underrated after Oklahoma and Texas in terms of fan excitement and how much they care about, their program and their school. I think when you look at the 4 that are coming right away, I mean, we talk about brands, national brands. How about BYU? I would say they're an international brand with the church, right? I mean, it's just what it is. And Houston, I think, and Cincinnati and UCF also bring some very interesting things to the table. For me, I know it's coming up on football season, and I don't make a lot of promises, Joe, but I'll make one here.
All right.
I'm going to tell you, Houston will have one of the best 5 or 6 college basketball teams in America this year. They're that good. They're that good. They could win the Big 12 this year in basketball. They are loaded. I think Central Florida, we don't know what they're going to be long term, but just the potential of what they could be with whatever they're at now, 65, 70,000 students, and that fertile recruiting ground for all sports, but in particular football. And then you look ahead to next year where you got the quote 4 corner schools. To me, it just cements more strength within the Big 12. I'm excited about Utah football and Arizona basketball and Colorado basketball and those kind of things. It just makes our league, very, very, very strong from my perspective. Again, nothing is perfect ever. I'm going to miss the round robin stuff in football and basketball and those kind of things. But hey, you got to be adaptive with the changing times, and I think the Big 12 has done that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got 1 or 2 questions left to bounce off you here. So I want to mention real quick, and this is a pretty, I know you've probably been asked this 100 times, and I'm sure you have a couple of different answers. Is there a time that you look back on from your career and say, okay, that was the best time that I've been a part of? I know that's such a specific answer, but also pretty vague. Is there a moment in your career that you look back and say, okay, that was really special? I don't know if that opportunity is going to be there again to witness what I experienced.
I love the question. And I think there are a few things that come to mind that I think all K-Staters would probably be able to relate with and to. I think about that December night in Arrowhead in 2003 when Kansas State beat Oklahoma. And it wasn't just the euphoria that I had for all K-Staters because they had just won a championship, but for me personally, it was like that was it for Bill Snyder. He finally got what he wanted, being so close so many times, including the disappointment of 98. Maybe, that's always going to be there. But I was so happy for him because he took a job that everybody said, don't go there. It's career suicide. And he took over a program that didn't offer much and turned it into something special. We all know that part. I would give you a few others. One of my favorite moments, this may sound a little odd, but one of my favorite moments was Jacob Pullen kissing the Power Cat in the middle of Bramlage Coliseum in his senior day game. When he walked in here as a freshman, I knew he could be a good player. I don't think any of us saw that he would be an All-American and K-State's all-time leading scorer when he left here. That was special. I think back to 2008 in Salt Lake City in the double overtime game against Xavier. And even though the disappointing loss to Butler was exactly that, it was I'm flying back from Salt Lake. I was so proud of those guys and what they accomplished. I could go on and on and on. You think about just being able to watch the career of guys like Darren Sproles and Jordy Nelson and hundreds of others. But you're asking about specific things, and I'm getting away from that, and I don't want to do that. But
I love the answer.
I've seen so many things too, like winning a regional in baseball, which nobody said. Most people thought that could never be done at Kansas State, and even being a part of a super regional in 2013. So I think in my time here, I've done 14 bowl games in 21 years or something like that, and 23 NCAA tournament games. So life's pretty good for this old boy.
Well, Wyatt, you might be the key to all that success then. So, you could be the Superman that K-State needs. And I'll touch it on baseball real quick. And I want to give a quick shout out. Jordan Wicks, if you saw 9 strikeouts in his MLB debut the other night for the Chicago Cubs, it's unbelievable to see that level of, excitement of not only just basketball players going and having success in the NBA, not only NFL players from K-State, having the MLB get some serious dudes out there on their ranks. That was a huge thing for me to watch. I was just excited for the kid, each pitch that got thrown. But I do want to ask this, and it's more of a story in my own case, I guess. Why you've done so much in your career. You have been at K-State, and I don't want to say this to make you feel old or anything crazy like that. But I tell you, I remember I was 16 or 17, and my family goes out to Western Kansas, and they'll, hunt pheasant and quail and stuff like that. And I remember there was a couple of guys that came out from Colorado, and for some reason, they were very passionate K-State fans. I think they had gone to K-State, been, Denver area or something just across the border of Kansas and, across that Colorado line. And I remember specifically walking through the fields, and K-State was playing, I think it was 2016 or 17. Dates could be wrong, quarterbacks could be wrong, but I remember hearing Jesse Hurts and a couple of different players in that vein where I didn't fully know what to expect. And I cared about K-State, obviously being a Kansas City kid, but I didn't fully know where I'd go to college. And I just remember it's a specific core memory for me walking through the fields and hearing your voice, hearing Stan, hearing all the good things going on with K-State and thinking, you know what? This place is pretty special. If you're walking through the fields with a bunch of random people and you've got a radio on your hip listening to a game that you care about, and we're all kind of celebrating K-State. I do remember them getting a win. Can't tell you who they played, but I just wanted to give you your flowers because, I mean, you have been just such someone I look up to and someone that so many of us care about and look up to. So I want to give you that because you've been a special guy, a special representative of Manhattan, and we're all so thankful to have you around.
Well, you said a lot there, and I couldn't be more appreciative, Joe. And I mean that as sincerely as I can say it. I say this every day of my life. This is my 22nd year here. I'll probably get a little emotional talking about this. I couldn't have asked for more. I'm proud to represent this place and the athletic department, and I'm proud of what has happened here in the time that I've been here. And it's special because of K-State. And it's going to be here and thrive long past me and long past you and probably many, many others. And that's the best part. But along the way, I have had such an honor to meet so many superstar K-Staters, whether they're in athletics or otherwise. And that's, I think, what sticks out for me. But to hear you talk about walking through a field and listening to a game, and people starting to say, because I've been here long enough, here recently, I've had young people say to me, I've literally listened to you my whole life. The first time that happened, it took me aback, to be honest with you, but I couldn't be more proud of the longevity just because I love coming to work here every day. And that it's as simple as that. It's a special place.
Well, we love you. Absolutely. Wyatt, thank you so much for taking the time. You're the man. We appreciate you. Keep up all the great work, man. And I tell you what, we're headed for some good things in the future. So having you along is an absolute plus. So Wyatt, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you taking the time.
I'll do it anytime. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.